In New York, there's a massive skyscraper called the Millennium Building. It's got 102 floors and 73 elevators, which sounds impressive until you hear about the elevator problems. Up on the observatory deck, two security guards, Andy and Gary, are busy using the telescope to spy on the neighbor having a wild party next door. Yeah, they're that kind of guards. Just as the rain starts pouring down, they head back inside before a lightning strike causes a brief power outage. Andy takes a bathroom break while Gary stays behind, noticing his watch acting up just as one of the elevators mysteriously opens. Thunder crashes outside, and Gary tries to keep the elevator doors open, but they refuse to cooperate. Suddenly, his flashlight turns on by itself, and when he tries to switch it off, the elevator doors start shaking, along with his hand. Just as the doors slam shut, Andy hears Gary scream. Rushing back, he finds Gary holding a destroyed flashlight, now terrified of the elevator. Andy thinks he's being dramatic and drags him away. The next day, a group of pregnant women finishes their yoga class and steps into the elevator. They notice it's going down faster than usual when, out of nowhere, the elevator sparks and stops. Alarms blare, and the guards are like, "Great, the third time this week." But since the lights on their control panel are fine, they assume it's just another false alarm and don't bother calling maintenance. Meanwhile, the women are trapped inside, with no working emergency buttons or phones, and even their cell phones have no signal. So, they wait, hoping someone will save them soon. Eventually, another tenant calls in to report the elevator issue, surprising the guards because their system shows everything is fine. Inside the elevator, the temperature's rising, and the women are starting to panic. When maintenance finally arrives, the guards cut the power to force the doors open, but not even the key works. The women accidentally set off a loud alarm, and now at least two of them are having contractions. Within minutes, all of the women are in labor, and one starts giving birth right there. The situation gets even crazier when a guard rushes over with an axe, desperate to help. Turns out, one of the women is his wife. A technician warns him it's too risky, and they end up wrestling on the floor. Just then, the elevator plummets down, even though the power is still off. When it finally reaches the lobby, the guards pry the doors open, and to their shock, they find babies inside. Meanwhile, maintenance techs Jeff and Mark are having a casual breakfast at a diner when Mark calls out a rude customer for being nasty to the waitress. The guy responds by punching Mark and tossing him into a table before storming out. Their breakfast is cut short when their boss calls, ordering them to head to the Millennium Building to fix the cursed elevator. At the same time, reporter Jennifer is sent to the Millennium Building to cover the chaos with the pregnant women, who are now being whisked away in ambulances. Jennifer tries to get a few words from the new moms, but the cops aren't having it. They shut her down. Meanwhile, Mark and Jeff finally show up, and the manager, Milligan, is practically sweating bullets. He's desperate to get the elevators fixed fast before someone sues him. So, Mark and Jeff are sent up to the engine room on the roof to investigate. As they tinker with the machinery, they casually talk about a mechanic who recently self-deleted, which is odd because the guy seemed really happy before. Mark suspects the engine might have been struck by lightning, but Jeff thinks that's just plain silly. After a few hours of poking around, they can't find anything wrong and decide to head out, probably hoping the problem magically fixes itself. Meanwhile, a blind guy's at the hairdresser, who gives him green hair as payback for getting way too handsy with her. You know, the kind of revenge you won't see coming. Well, dude is already blind though. So, he and his guide dog hop into the elevator, expecting to go down. Instead, the elevator shoots up to the 91st floor, an unfinished, empty floor. He pushes all the buttons like it's going to help, but the elevator doors just shut and head down without them. When he calls for another one, his dog starts growling. The elevator races up to floor 91 again, but when the doors open, there's no elevator car, just an empty shaft. His dog barks, trying to warn him, but he takes a step forward and falls in. Desperately clinging to the edge, his dog tries to pull him back, but it's too much. They both tumble into the elevator shaft. Later that night, Andy and Gary are on floor 44 sneaking some whiskey when they get a call from the security team. One of the elevators is moving, but no one's supposed to be in the building at this hour. The elevator stops, doors open but no one comes out. Spooked but curious, Andy and Gary try to check it out. Of course, Gary trips over a statue, making a loud noise, and the elevator doors immediately close and take off again. The duo rushes downstairs, finding the same elevator open on floor 40, but once again, it shuts as soon as they get close. This thing's playing a game of elevator tag. The elevator zooms back up to floor 44, and right when Gary's flashlight starts flickering, because, of course, it does, the doors open, no elevator car behind them. Andy peers in and finds the guide dog hanging from a metal beam. Suddenly, the doors slam shut, trapping Andy by the neck. Gary panics and tries to pull him free, but the doors won't budge. Then the elevator car starts coming down and, well, let's just say Andy doesn't make it out with his head. The next day, the Millennium Building shuts down all the elevators, leaving hundreds of tourists stranded outside. The press isn't allowed inside, and the cops aren't spilling any info. Milligan meets with a detective, who says they've reviewed the security footage but found no sign of intruders. Mark and Jeff are called back to check the elevators again, but Mark's nursing a hangover and runs off to puke. Jennifer, who's pretending to be a cleaning lady, sneaks up on him and snaps a picture. She tries to squeeze some answers out of him, but Mark's not in the mood. He leaves the bathroom with Jennifer hot on his heels, but the guards kick her out before she can press him further. Later, Mark and Jeff report to Milligan, claiming they didn't find anything wrong. With the detective's blessing, Milligan decides to reopen the elevators. The next day, Mark shows up at work, only to be roasted by his co-workers. Confused, he's called into his boss's office, where he learns that the newspaper ran his photo with a clickbait headline, and now his boss is fuming. Jennifer had sarcastically quoted something Mark once said about elevators, and now, thanks to her, the cops have their eyes on him as a suspect. To make things worse, Mark is blindsided when he finds out he's been assigned a new partner. Looking out the window, he spots Jeff in a heated argument with a scientist named Gunther. Curious, Mark asks his new partner about the mechanic who self-deleted and learns he used to be Jeff's partner. Meanwhile, in the city, two friends are roller skating around without a care in the world, smashing into people and cars like they own the streets. Eventually, they roll into the Millennium Building's parking lot, and one of the skaters gets hit by a car. No biggie though, because his buddy just keeps skating along. While the injured guy is busy checking his wounds, all the car's wipers mysteriously start swishing in sync, and an elevator opens nearby. A blinding light shoots out, sucks the guy into the elevator, and then spits him out on the 86th floor. Next thing you know, his body flies across the room, smashes through a window, and plummets to the ground. He's done for. When Mark sees the news, he rushes to the Millennium Building, but the cops won't let him in. On his way out, he spots Jennifer with the other reporters and chases her down. She apologizes for the article, explaining that while the police think the skater jumped to self-delete, she suspects foul play. Down in the lobby, a little girl manages to escape her nursery and starts playing by the elevators. Every time one opens, she runs up to it, only for it to shut and another one opens. She's having the time of her life playing this weird elevator game, but then one elevator goes up just a few inches, leaving a gap underneath. When she peeks in, she lets out a blood-curdling scream. The nursery teacher and Milligan rush over to find the girl, who's fine, but her doll, not so much. They find one of the doll's arms stuck in the elevator door. Later that night, Mark is at home studying the elevator blueprints when he hears a noise outside. He grabs a bat, ready to swing at whatever's out there, only to find Jennifer standing at his door. She's got a video for him to watch. It's security footage of the roller skater's death. Mark watches and thinks it's proof that the guy really did self-delete. But Jennifer rewinds the tape and points out the timestamps. The elevator went from the parking lot to the 86th floor in just 2 seconds, which should be impossible. Mark finally admits something weird is going on and agrees to bring Jennifer along to visit Jeff, who's been MIA. When they confront Jeff and ask him to watch the tape, he freaks out, yells at them, and storms off in his van. That's not normal, and even Jeff's wife confirms he hasn't been acting like himself lately. Jennifer and Mark leave and grab dinner, where Jennifer drops a bomb. She thinks the elevator is haunted. Afterward, they head to Jennifer's office to dig into Gunther's background. Turns out he used to work for a shady company called Codalt Industries, which got shut down for bribery and illegal use of government money. They also made biochips from live tissue, including one using dolphin brains that apparently developed a mind of its own. Jennifer's coworker Chip swings by and spills some more dirt. Codalt's tech grew like a living organism, but nobody knows what happened to it. He hasn't heard of Gunther, but offers to help them look for more info. On their way home, Jennifer doubles down on her haunted elevator theory, and Mark's starting to believe it too. The next day, Milligan steps into an elevator, only to have blood drip onto his shoulder. When he looks up, he sees the hatch open, and suddenly Jeff's dead body falls through. Freaked out, Milligan crawls out of the elevator, but by then other employees have seen the body too. Mark gets a call about Jeff's death and rushes to the press conference with Jennifer. To their shock, Gunther is sitting at the table alongside Milligan, the detective, and Mark's boss. The detective claims Jeff had been a suspect all along and now they're sure he was behind everything. He also announces they received a note from the murderer. Mark knows this is a cover-up, but when Jennifer tries to question Gunther about the biochips, he warns her to stay quiet or they'll end up looking like suspects too. Once outside, Mark tells Jennifer that the cops are helping Milligan cover it all up. He also shares a hunch. Jeff's previous partner's self-deletion might have been a lie too. They head to Jeff's house for clues, but the police have already cleaned it out. Jeff's wife reveals that Jeff died in the same way as his partner, confirming Mark's theory. Next, the duo visits the widow of Jeff's old partner. She's not thrilled to see them and refuses to open the door, so Jennifer picks the lock. Inside, they find a creepy altar dedicated to the dead partner. The widow finally opens up, telling them her husband was left bleeding inside the building for 3 days before he died. She believes his spirit is still haunting the place, waiting for revenge. Back at the Millennium Building, a large group of people cram into an elevator that suddenly shoots up, ignoring all the floor buttons. Panic breaks out, and one kid even wets his pants. Without warning, the floor opens beneath them, sending some of the passengers plummeting to their deaths. Those who manage to hold on quickly lose their grip, falling one by one. The elevator shoots through the roof, wrecking half of the engine room. This disaster gets the White House's attention, and the president declares that all the elevator deaths are acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, the head of the elevator company meets with Gunther and gives him a grim ultimatum. Since he created this monster, it's now his job to destroy it. Back at the Millennium Building, the police show up with more firepower than usual, launching a full-blown operation. Jennifer rolls up in Jeff's van with Mark hiding in the back, pretending to be a company employee delivering elevator materials for the investigation. But the cops don't buy it and demand to search the van. Just as things are about to go south, Jennifer gets a call from Chip, who drops a bombshell. Biochips are still in use, and now they're experimenting on humans. The police get fed up with Jennifer stalling and lock her in a room, forcing her to hang up. While this is happening, Mark sneaks out of the van undetected and crawls under a police truck to slip into the building. As the cops haul in crates of ammo and explosives, Mark sneaks around like a ninja, using his master key to open a service elevator. Just in time, he jumps on top of the elevator before the cops use it to reach the top floor. Once the coast is clear, he heads for the roof, dodging a few cops along the way. In the engine room, he uses his key to activate one of the main elevators, triggering an alert on the guard's monitors. After grabbing a lamp, Mark makes a mad dash to the main elevator. He jumps inside just before the cops catch sight of him, but the elevator doesn't move. That is, until he touches the hatch, and suddenly it's speeding downward at a dangerous pace. Pressing the buttons does nothing, so Mark forces a short circuit to stop the elevator. He climbs on top of the box and starts controlling it manually, moving up a few floors before spotting a cryptic message written in blood on the wall. Peeking into a hole, he jumps when a bird flies out, but finds nothing else suspicious. As he continues his ascent, he notices some strange white substance in another hole and sparks coming from the cables above. He tries to go higher, but the police reach the engine room and shut down the elevator. With no other option, Mark starts climbing the cables by hand. He pries open a compartment in the wall, causing the engine room's elevator box to shake and spark. Inside the compartment, he finds the glowing biochip and doesn't hesitate. He starts stabbing it furiously. Meanwhile, the elevator box catches fire and begins descending. The biochip isn't dead yet, so Mark keeps stabbing like a madman. Just then, the cops blow open the elevator door with explosives and charge in, aiming to capture Mark. The burning elevator is racing toward them, and while most officers manage to escape, one unlucky cop trips, and his legs dangle over the edge. The elevator box cuts him in half as it roars past. Mark dodges the carnage and prepares to flee, but a second elevator suddenly ascends, and its cables wrap around his legs, dragging him along. With a Herculean effort, Mark frees himself and leaps clear just before the elevator crashes into the engine room. As debris rains down, Mark hides under a beam to avoid getting crushed. Meanwhile, Gunther arrives at the building, easily passing security with a special pass. The operation leader recognizes Gunther on camera and realizes this isn't a terrorist attack after all. In the locked room, Jennifer escapes by crawling through the vents, while Mark arms himself with a weapon stolen from the cops. He heads to floor 65, where he finds the biochip again, ready to destroy it. But before he can, Gunther appears with a gun. Mark disarms him, and a brutal fight breaks out, with Gunther nearly kicking Mark down the elevator shaft. Just when things look bleak for Mark, Jennifer arrives and grabs the gun, forcing Gunther to surrender. Mark seizes the moment to retrieve his weapon, but Gunther blocks the elevator door, desperate to protect his creation. The cops show up, causing a distraction, and Gunther takes Jennifer hostage. Jennifer, though, isn't having it. She bites his hand and breaks free. Alone and cornered, Gunther meets his doom as the elevator cables come to life like tentacles, wrapping around him and dragging him toward his death. In the chaos, Mark's leg gets tangled in the cables, but Jennifer throws him the weapon just in time. He uses it to finally destroy the biochip. The resulting explosion blasts Mark back into the corridor, and the cables drop Gunther's lifeless body. Later, Mark has recovered and is leaving the hospital. Jennifer picks him up, and as they step into the elevator, they're startled when it suddenly stops. Turns out it's just Mark accidentally pressing the emergency button. They laugh it off and, in a moment of relief, share a kiss.